The Melee Occultist has a few different focal points that make it quite a powerful and effective build. Firstly, we focus on dealing both chaos and vitality damage, which are two damage sources that the Occultist Mastery provides quite well. We then utilise some skills that make our enemies more susceptible to these damage types. All of this, coupled with a focus on attack damage converted to health, will result in a build that is quite powerful in close quarters, dealing quite a lot of damage, as well as allowing us to stay alive via the massive amounts of healing we'll be doing to ourselves through our attack damage. So there are a few different skills that we focus on in this build. First, there's Curse of Frailty, and you can put at least 1 point into here. However, our main goal here is to unlock vulnerability. The reason that we want to choose this skill is because it actually is what makes our enemies very vulnerable to our attacks, due to the reduction in elemental and vitality resistance that it offers. Then we have Soleil's Witchfire and Second Right. Simply deals huge amounts of chaos damage and will be one of our main damage sources. We then have Sigil of Consumption and Destruction. This is a twofold investment. Primarily, of course, it deals a lot of damage and is our other main damage source, but equally as important, it gives us attack damage converted to health. Once you have quite a few points invested here, you'll be just healing yourself a lot whenever you lay a sigil down on the floor, provided of course you're dealing damage to your enemies. This should more or less keep you alive during your combat. Finally, we have Blood of Dreeg and Armour of the Guardian. Blood of Dreeg, very handy in a tight spot, as it gives us the added health regeneration. And Armour of the Guardian is quite good as well, boosts our damage a bit with that extra attack speed. In terms of attribute investment, we're primarily focused on Spirit, simply because we're looking to increase our vitality and chaos damage as much as we possibly can. Some focus is required in both of Physique and Cunning as well. Physique, of course, because we're working within melee range, we want to keep our defensive ability and health kind of high, just to keep our survivability there. And some points into Cunning as well, as we are using a basic melee attack a lot of the time, just so we can hit enemies with a fair amount of consistency. As a very rough guide, in terms of a ratio, I would suggest putting 2 points into Spirit for every 1 point into Cunning and Physique, but most definitely tweak that depending on how you feel your character is going. With gear selection, we're primarily focused on augmenting our chaos and vitality damage. Also, if possible, I would recommend trying to find a few items with an attack damage converted to health attribute. As mentioned previously, we're focusing on trying to keep ourselves healed through our attack damage, so that would help quite a lot. In terms of an offhand, you can of course use a shield to help with your survivability if you feel as though you're lacking a bit in that area. However, if possible, I'd recommend going with an offhand such as a Tome or Archive. These do not provide any defensive traits like a shield does. However, it does augment our damage types if we find the right type. In my case, I've found a tome that augments vitality damage by quite a lot. The other advantage of using this is there is a minor skill recharge on all of these items, so that allows us to utilise Sigil of Consumption a lot more often. In terms of our playstyle, we're focusing on melee attacks as we're a lot closer into the enemy and can manipulate their position a lot easier. The reason we do this is because that allows us to force enemies to stay within our Sigil of Consumption a lot more. Therefore we do a lot more damage and do a lot more healing to ourselves. So as you'll see in the video, I do try to lure as many enemies as possible through Sigil of Consumption and then try to pin them there. The sigils that you cast will probably become the focal point of each of your exchanges with enemies. Of course, also where possible, you'll want to be casting Curse of Frailty on most of your opponents, both when they're within Sigil of Consumption, as they'll end up suffering more damage, as well as in basic melee exchanges, as Curse of Frailty and Vulnerability do open up our enemies to additional chaos damage. Thank you very much for watching. please feel free to like this video or subscribe for further Grim Dawn videos.